Hey guys, Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and you know it's going to be a good review when I have bits of paper in my hand because I can't remember everything off the top of my head. But today we're finally going to get a chance to take a look at the GTX780 Ti. Now I have to admit that I didn't think we would be getting this card until kind of like maybe December time, because when it appeared up on stage a few weeks ago, even the nVidia kind of reps and people in the UK didn't know that they were bringing it out on stage. And it's kind of all been kind of hurried through. Now, there's a lot of people out there be like, well, what's the point in the Ti because of the actual 780? Well, last week, nVidia absolutely slashed the prices of the 780 by, you know, in some instances up to and even over £100. I had a look this morning and I found the MSI GTX780 gaming that I was talking about in the 290X review down to 379 quid in the UK. You'll be able to find it if you search around the shops. Just kind of a real weird thing so that you're aware of how things are working at the moment. It's slightly off topic, but if you use Google to search for prices, Google has now restricted the e-tailers that come up in the Google shopping. If you don't spend enough money with Google on advertising, the retailers aren't coming up in that shopping listing. Now, I always used to use that when I was looking for prices for reviews and comparisons and so on and so forth. But now you quite literally have to go and do the manual kind of search going through the shops. Because like I said, Google's got a bit greedy now and they're actually restricting who comes up in that search. I wonder how long that will be before that starts affecting review sites and stuff, because we certainly haven't got the money to start chucking Google money for, you know, advertising and stuff. But we will see how things pan out. So like I said, that is, you know, kind of very kind of chucked out there. But we've had a lot of graphics cards pumping out recently. It's been kind of manic really, especially for someone like me where we've got quite a small team. And I do the majority of the high-end testing and the videos and the website and the, you know what I mean, there's been an awful lot of work to try and chomp through. But we've obviously got the 780 Ti. Now I kind of, when I first saw the 780 Ti, just at a glance, I thought all they'd really done was taken 3GB of memory off and then essentially repackaged the Titan. But it's a little bit more complex than that. So if we talk just CUDA cores, for the first part, the GTX780 has got 2,304 CUDA cores. The Titan has got 2,688 CUDA cores. The 780 Ti, so the new one that's just been released, has got 2,880 CUDA cores. So the new 780 has got more cores than the Titan did. So long gone are my expectations of this, you know, just being a cut down Titan. This is potentially going to be an absolute Titan raper. When we talk about clock speed, the base clock on the 780 was 863, the Titan was 837, this is 875. Boost clock on the 780 was 900, the Titan was 876, this is 928. Memory clock on the 780 was 6,000. Memory clock on the 780 Ti is 7,000. They've gone, you know, way and above. About the only real thing that actually shares with the Titan actually is the fact that it's got a 384-bit memory interface. And the original 780 has only got 288. So there's lots about this that they've kind of turned it up to 11 with. But when they send us graphics cards and stuff like this, we get like PDFs and stuff. They're called like reviewers guides and specifications, and they've kind of bundle us with everything so that we can have a look through. But the one thing that's kind of stuck in my head is a paragraph on here on power balancing, and it's to allow an overclock. And I'll read you what it says. It says, the final improvement that we've added to the GeForce GTX 780 Ti is a new power balancing feature that's been made so enthusiasts can get the most out of their overclock. As you know, the GPU gets its power from three sources: the 6-pin and the 8-pin power connectors, the PCI Express interface, which is obviously where it clicks into the motherboard, and under normal conditions, the power is sent to the GPU balanced across these three sources. But when a user overclocks their graphics card, they can unbalance the power delivery and draw more power from one than the others, and potentially maxing that power delivery out. With this new feature, we can steer power from one input to another, so if you max out one power source, you can draw more power from the others to make up the difference. When overclocking, users should be able to push the GTX780 Ti even further than the Titan or 780 GPUs in the past. Now, I will talk to you about the kind of overclocking and stuff that I've done with this in the not too distant future, but that to me just sounded like a lot of marketing mumbo jumbo. But I will say from this very, very early point, that shit the fucking bed, this thing absolutely blew my mind when I started to overclock it, to the point where this thing has quite literally blown the doors off of all of the single core graphics card tests that we've ever done. This thing has been kind of barking up the trees of tests that we've done with 2 graphics cards in the past, and it's completely kind of frazzled my brain. Now, I will say at the beginning that we do already know that finally we've got prices, and it's going to be £559 RRP in the UK. I've not got a dollar's price, but I would have thought that you're probably going to be looking at around the $600, maybe $650. That's just a guess. I'm not don't quote me on that. So it's going to be around the sort of price that the 780 was released at. But there's obviously going to be a lot of AMD fanboys out there now going, oh my God, it's more expensive than the 290. And yes, you'll be right. We will cover that all at the end when we get to the conclusion and do a little bit of bitch slapping. But at the end of the day, yes, it is going to be more expensive, but I will talk to you about, the impact on prices and all that kind of stuff in a minute. But what I need to do now is I need to bring you in, and we'll have a look at the card up close, because it's in the rig at the minute because the filming's being done all over the place. So I'll give you a up close look at the card itself next to a normal 780, because there are a couple of subtle differences. Giving you an up close look at the test rig, and then we'll move into, I am going to show you some screenshots with this, because you do need to see some screenshots, and I will be showing you the 290X, the 780 and the 780 Ti, and it is worth a look. And then we'll obviously break off and have a conclusion right at the very end. But for now at least, that sounds like I'm finishing, but I'm not. I'm going to shut my mouth and bring you in for a closer look. Right then peeps, so an up close look at the cards, but one thing I want to do right now, because I filmed this all over the place, is I say later on in the conclusion I didn't know about the PCBs. I have found out now that the PCB is exactly the same between the GTX780 and the 780 Ti. So there's a couple of things I wanted to double check on first. They are the same, so that does mean water blocks are going to fit. It also should mean that we should be seeing vendor cards pretty quickly as well. But really the only thing that we really need to point out as a difference between these cards is very, very subtle, and that we've got the GTX 780 here on the left, and if you look through the window you can see that we've got that silver or chrome or nickel, whatever you want to put it, on the inside. You can see the fins there, they're clear, they're silver, they're bare metal, and then you can see the 780 at the top is just in the metal, whereas if we look at the Ti, the fins are actually black. They've been chemically coated black, so it gives it a more stealthy look. And then as you can see, they've picked out the GTX 780 Ti at the top in black, and I actually prefer this look a lot better. A, because it makes the lettering stand out, but let's face it, you're not going to see it once it's in your rig anyway. But I do like the contrast between the metal on the outside of the shroud and then the black fins underneath in the window. Other than that, it's all still exactly the same. We'll leave the Ti there, bring the 780 back in. As you can see, we've still got the same light up GeForce GTX, as you know, they've both got 2 SLI fins, a 6 and an 8 pin on both, all exactly the same. When we look on the other end of the graphics card, full size display port, HDMI and 2 DVIs, again all exactly the same. The only time that you can really pick out a difference is when you look on the back, and this is why I wanted to check about the PCBs, because if you have a look at this line here, this is on a standard 780, those 2 lines there, they're not on the 780 Ti. But when you pop the hood and have a look at the PCBs on the other side, strangely, they're exactly the same, and I had to check with the pictures on the nVidia FTP and the pictures I took of the original 780, but they are the same. So yeah, I'm not going to argue with it. I do have to say though that all of the other points on the two graphics cards are exactly the same. It was just these lines here that kind of threw me, so I don't know why they're on here and not on the other one, but on the business side of the card, where the water block side of things is going to matter, they are exactly the same. So don't stress, don't worry. I'm not so sure if you want to be changing a 780 for a 780 Ti. We'll have to see later on. But it should certainly help you all if you are thinking about water cooling, or buying aftermarket coolers, and maybe if you want to be insane enough to want to do it. But as far as aesthetics are concerned, that's it really. Now we're going to move on and take a look at it all fitted and see our test system for today. So I'm going to try and keep the video to a minimum, shut my mouth, and we'll move on. Right then peeps, just to give you a quick look at the entire rig as it is in there. We've got the Vantage 4 Extreme in there. It's in a different case. Ignore the solid state drives down this side because we are only using one. This was just something I was playing with a little while ago and I've not taken them out yet. Power supply is an AX760i. That is smaller than the normal AX1200 that I normally use in the bench rigs, but it's not going to make a blind bit of difference to any of the test results, power delivery, anything like that. That PSU is capable of driving two of these without really breaking a sweat. But we've got the 4960X in there at 4.6 gigahertz, which is what we always run everything at. We've got Corsair Dominator Platinum memory in there at 2133. H100i, we've got that set to quiet just so that we can listen to the graphics card more and tune into that. There is a solid state drive in there. It's a 240GB Neutron GTX, obviously a Corsair one. We've got individually braided cables in there, and obviously the 780 Ti. And in case you're wondering what the case is, because it seemed to be quite confusing for people before, it's the Corsair 750D, and I have done a review on it. You can see it on the channel if you want to go and fish it out. Look through the playlist, it'll be in there, and it is one of the more recent ones. So that's the rig. Now we need to move on. We'll look at overclocking and stuff and some temperatures, and we'll see how we get on. Right then peeps, so I know we are a little bit zoomed in, but that's just so that you can see the writing. And essentially I just want to show you that we are at stock clocks everywhere, but up here in this top right hand corner you can see GPU core, memory clock, GPU temperature, fan speed. I've actually got these set to record the maximum setting, so it will essentially, it's got the GPU boost. So although this says 876, it will boost up and go past the standard settings. So what we're going to do is we're just going to have a look down through here to see what the GPU core clock goes up to, but we can also see the maximum GPU temperature and also the maximum percentage of the fan speed. And what I'm going to do is just quickly here as well, I'm going to flick this down to highest reading, so it will give me the highest reading RPM wise on the fan speed as well. Now this at the moment is 1110 RPM max. And to test that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open Unigine Valley, and then we've got it in 8 times anti-aliasing and 2560 by 1440. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to let that loop for 30 minutes now, and then I'll come back after 30 minutes and you can see what the what those scores have gone up to. So don't mind me, I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea and I won't bore you with any more of this. Right then peeps, so we're still on Valley. I just want to show you because then we'll go from actually in the benchmark to back to the desktop again. So there we go, we can see the results there, and if we, like I said, you can still see that all of these results are still the same. You can see everything's still the same in Afterburner, but these are the results up here that we want to look at. Up here we can see that we've gone up to 1020 megahertz on the GPU core clock. Now that's done that itself, we've not had to change any settings. It's basically gone, let's say 125, nearly 150 megahertz boosted up itself there. It doesn't do the memory. GPU temperature 83 degrees, it does go up to 82 to 85 degrees, that's what it's set at. And if I show you down here on the power limited percentage, you can see that you've got a link here, and it's an 82 degrees link that we've got here at the moment. Now, if you want to prioritize your temperature, what you can do is prioritize the temperature underneath, and you can turn this back and turn it back to 80, or go right back to 70 if you want. You can set it to whatever you want, and then the boost up here will work to these temperatures. That's a really nice touch on these that I've always really quite liked, because if the graphics card isn't loud anyway, but if you're a little bit cautious about your temperatures and the fact it's on an 80 scares you a little bit maybe, you can either dial that limit back there, or you can turn your fans up. So you can either keep it quiet and running all nice and cool, or you can turn your fans up. It's not the the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's not going to blow any doors off, but the options are there, so that's all quite cool. You can see that the fan speed has gone up to 57%, which went up from, it was 1100 before, it went up to 2376. Now the great thing about that 2376 is I couldn't hear it at all, and if we'd have had 2376 RPM running on the 290X, it would have sounded like I was blowing leaves around the garden with a diesel powered flipping 2-stroke motor. Would have been horrific. My girlfriend would have been here like trying to find out where the hairdryer was. So it's although these 57% and 2400 RPM, it wasn't intrusive. The door's off the rig by the side of me, I couldn't hear it. It just meshed into the rest of the rig, and the rest of the rig's set up to be silent as well. But one thing I will say is overclocking. When I've done the overclocking, I'm going to put this back, I'm going to reset this, I'm going to move this up here. With my overclocking for this rig, quite literally all I did was this. I didn't change any of the core voltages. Now I can change the core voltage if I use precision, but I've not set Afterburner up to do it. And that's just because you don't really need to. And quite literally, now one thing I will say is all I did for power limit is moved it up to 106. Now, with that power limit moved up, the things that I changed for the core clock and the memory clock, not all of the graphics cards are going to be the same. So what I get here, you may not get from your one that you buy from the shop. Your one might be better, your one might be worse. That doesn't mean you've got a worse graphics card than me. It's just part of the silicon lottery. I was quite lucky with mine, and I managed to get an offset on mine of 250, and then I managed to get an extra 350 out of the memory as well. And when we go in and have a look at this, you can see this has now gone up to 1126, and then our memory's gone up from 1750 up to 1925. Now when it goes up to the boost as well, up in this top one, the boost goes up to 1200, nearly 1250 megahertz. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now I'm not going to run those tests again and then show you, but it's just to show you that we've got some epic stuff here, and to be able to, at stock it's over a gig, and then with a bit of an overclock you're looking at nearly 1250 megahertz. It's absolutely fucking unbelievable. The overclocking on this really does go like a train. I think with a water block on it as well, you'd probably not necessarily get more megahertz and stuff, but it would make it a lot more stable for long-term gaming and stuff. I've not really run into too many stability problems, but obviously it will start to get warm with the stock cooler on it with long gaming periods or benchmarks and stuff. And I would probably feel more comfortable turning the fan up a little bit, just so that I knew it was keeping the temperatures down. But the good bit with turning the fan up on this graphics card is it doesn't make a shitload of noise like the AMD one did. But anyway, so we're going to leave that there now. It's now time for me to show you some rather eye-opening benchmarks. Right then, boys and girls, on to the benchmarks. Now I'm going to show you Firestrike Extreme, and I'm going to run through the scores with you just so that you understand where we're doing. Now it's obviously Firestrike Extreme, you just click, you just run, you don't have to really worry about it. It's quite a good stressful benchmark, and the scores are quite small, so any increases we get do kind of mean a big deal really. Now this result here, 4,464, this is a stock 780, literally out the box, run it, forget about it, that's that, done. And this result here, 4,945. This is a stock 290X. Now you can see that we've got a 500 point difference there. That's a hell of a whack up for Firestrike Extreme. The fact that we almost get to 5,000 points is a big deal. Then we move on to the 780 Ti. The 780 Ti does chuck in a 5,000 point. Now for a single card out the box, no worries. This is our biggest stock single card score to date. But as we've said before, you can get some amazing overclocks out of the 780 Ti. It's obviously been built a little bit more, but don't forget we're still on a standard cooler, and we've not got any water cooling or anything special or anything like that. We've just got the standard cooler, and we've not done any voltage increases. So with that overclock that I said to you before, with those exact same settings, I then managed to get 5,950 out of it. Now if you have a look, now I know we're talking overclock to a standard card, so before anyone starts bitching and moaning, the reason why we didn't overclock the AMD is R1 just would not do it. You needed to, just to get a minimal overclock out of it, you needed to have the fan on 100%, and it wasn't usable, it was horrific. And the boost that we got from it wasn't that great. But if we have a look, if we put these two side by side, and with the overclock and the settings that I got on the 780 Ti, I could live with that. Even with the fan running at 60%, you couldn't hardly hear it. And it sounds like a lot, 60%, but like I said, it was quiet. If you put 60% on the AMD, it was a hairdryer. But anyway, you can see that there's 1,000 point difference on these. And do you know what I mean? If you want to just go with the stock results, because I know there's going to be AMD fanboys, I'll change the screenshot for you. There we go, stock for stock, 5,013. You're still looking at, what are you looking at there? 58. So sort of like 70 points difference, which doesn't really sound like a lot, but for this, do you know what I mean? For Firestrike Extreme it is. But if you're willing to overclock, want to overclock, like to play, don't want to buy an aftermarket water block, don't want to wait for a normal card, with this one, as it comes out of the box that you can buy off the shelf today, those are the kind of scores that you can literally go straight out and get. And I'm a silence freak, and that was perfectly acceptable for me to be able to have lived with. Now there are other scores that I'm going to show you, so what I'm going to do is, so I don't bore you, keep opening and closing screenshots, I'm just going to stop the camera quickly and I will be back in a sec. Right then peeps, another one of the good benchmarks that we can use to kind of show the differences between cards is still 3D Mark Vantage. And the reason why I still like 3D Mark Vantage is because on a lot of graphics cards, the Vantage clock that you'll be able to achieve will be a lot lower than any of the other benchmarks. So if you can get a Vantage clock stable, generally it's stable throughout everything else. I've explained before that I've had like 200 megahertz differences between, say for argument's sake, a graphics card that was 1100 megahertz stable on Vantage, you then go to 3D Mark 11, it could be 1300 megahertz if it was capable of it. And I have had, you know, gaps that wide before. But anyway, first one, 26,510. This is our stock 780, and that was a GPU score of 25,916. If we then move on, we had this is the 290X, we had a X score of 27,008 with a stock GPU score of 26,434. And then if we move on to the stock 780 Ti, if you have a look, you can see the difference here, 780, 290X, and then we move on to the 780 Ti. I mean, there's, what are we looking at there? Say 500 points difference between that and that, but then to step up to the 780 Ti at stock, you're looking at a 2,000 point difference. So these are the points I was trying to stress before about the differences between the 780 and the 290X. But if we have a look, we move up to 29,087 with a GPU score of 28,522. So there's a 2,000 point GPU score difference between the 290X and the 780 Ti. But again, if we chuck that overclock back on to see our results, there's an an unbelievable difference. We go from 29,000 up to 33,894. It's almost a 5,000 point difference. And again, GPU score 28,522 up to 33,418. I mean, if you really want to be looking at the differences between a stock card to stock card with an overclock, that is the point that we start to try and stress our points about how limiting the stock cooler was on the 290X. And these were the reasons why I really didn't, I went to town on this. The cooler was what was holding it back. This is what happens when you get a cooler done right. But a cooler done right, it doesn't really matter. Those kind of scores do not get put into a benchmark without a graphics card with this serious amount of kahunas hanging between its legs. And like I said, this has literally just topped our graphics card scores, both in stock and overclock mode. And the overclocks results are actually kind of barking up to the points where dual cards have before. And I don't mean like a 790, I mean like two full-fledged 7970s, two 680s, real big, massive kind of, stuff that you would have to spend a shitload of money on. And it's the first, it really has, it's just absolutely smashed what we would expect out of a single cord card, to the point where it almost makes the Titan look embarrassing. It's just absolutely mental. But anyway, I'm going to leave this here. If you want to have a look at any of the other results, make sure you click on the review link in the bottom left hand side of the corner, because that's the most important thing you can do, is go and have a look at all the graphs and everything like that. But I'm going to move on now, and we will break into, I think you already know what is going to be in the conclusion, but I do need to do it. Right then, peeps, congratulations to any of you that actually sat through the whole review and got to the conclusion. What I will do is I'll start off with the award, as we always do, and then break into the conclusion itself. But don't forget to go and click on the review link so you can go and see all the graphs and see this compared with all of the other graphics cards that we've tested. So like the MSI GTX780 Gaming, the MSI Lightning, the Asus cards, the AMD cards that we reviewed. You can see where the 290X sits in the results, and everything. Now, award, ba-bing, gold award, absolutely. It didn't really kind of take much thought about it really with something like this. Price is going to be £559 is what I'm being told. I will kind of admit that I was hoping and kind of that it would come in between 500 and 550, kind of, wishfully thinking it would be about 525 quid, so about, 100 and a bit pound more than the 780 was. And that was just, I suppose wishful thinking. That was what I was hoping it was going to be. I know that, all the AMD fanboys are going to have a field day with this, but don't forget, boys and girls, I'm just telling the results that I see. I don't care the name on the card. If this was the 290X, I would be saying the exact same fucking thing. It really doesn't matter whether it's an nVidia, it doesn't matter whether it's an AMD Direct, or an MSI card, a Gigabyte card, an Asus card. The results, they kind of speak for themselves. Now, stock cooler, don't forget. Look at that overclock that we've got. It kind of speaks for itself. It's literally blown the doors off of anything that we could have possibly expected. So there's all those people out there going, oh, it doesn't matter, the 290X is going to have AIB coolers soon, and it's going to allow us to overclock it, or we're going to put a water cooler on it. Same goes for that. I actually don't think that you're more, these are going to be very limited to the Silicon Lottery, as are the AMD cards. But I think really with the nVidia stuff, if you put an aftermarket cooler on it, it's just going to make it quieter, or it'll drop the temperatures. Same with water cooling. I don't think you'll get any more of an overclock out of it than I did with this one. I think that it's just your temperatures are going to drop, and it'll probably be stable for a lot longer, because I was, absolutely ragging the arse off of it to get those clocks out of it. I possibly could go a little bit further, and if I had water, I probably would do. I didn't run into any stability issues or anything like that, and it wasn't getting massively hot. With the fan on 60%, really couldn't hear it. I could hear it, because I'm used to listening for these things, but as far as in with the rest of the rig's concerned, it wasn't very loud at all. Also, when with it at 60%, the temperatures were getting around the 70 degrees mark with the overclock. So that's another thing to kind of stress. Even though we added that overclock, bringing that fan speed up actually really still did help not only drop the temperatures a little bit, but by a fair margin. And generally when you add overclocks, you turn the fan up to keep it at roughly the same temps, not actually get, you know, both out of it. So the long and short of it is significantly more expensive than the 290X, which it's kind of been brought out to kind of, you know, compete with. And, you know, that's going to be down to, you know, what your thoughts are on your budget and stuff like that. If you want, you know, a graphics card that you can take out the box, will be the fastest thing that you can get your hands on, but then also you can make it even faster by overclocking it, and you don't have to go and buy third-party coolers. You don't have to go, or wait for third-party coolers, I should say. You don't have to go and buy a water clock to have even the remote possibility of being able to overclock it without your ears bleeding. This is kind of it, but you are going to have to pay that price premium, and that's going to be perfectly down to you. If you want to leave it in your rig, stock, cool, quiet, let's face it, this thing is 12 degrees cooler than the AMD, yet it's still quieter and it's quicker. Is, you know, that extra money that you're going to have to spend, is that going to be worth it for you? I have to admit, for me personally, I do like a graphics card that I can have a bit of a play with, you know, maybe overclock it if I want. Personally, if I was going to run something like this, I would run a water block on it, just so that I could literally overclock it to within an inch of its life. Because something that we've not covered today is I didn't overvolt this thing at all I did was use the power slider. You've still got voltage options, so this graphics card could still have more in that core available. Who knows, this thing could have the ability to run at 1300 megahertz and push those scores even further up our graphs. The one thing I do need to say though, and maybe this will please the AMD fanboys, maybe this will piss some nVidia fanboys off, I don't know, but this graphics card has well and truly made the Titan completely and utterly pointless. Unless, well, other than the fact that if you need that 6GB of memory on it for, you know, ridiculous kind of displays, you know, massive resolution and stuff, then as far as a game is concerned, you've seen the kind of stuff that we've been able to run with it today, and we've used a 2560 by 1440 screen. If you want to go and look at the frames per second that we've been able to get, go and have a look at the main review. It was we didn't have any worries. If you're running kind of like 3 2560 screens, or do you know what I mean, stuff like that, then you may want that extra VRAM. We've obviously yet to test Battlefield as well to see whether this is going to, you know, bring that frame buffer into play or not, but for everything that we've tested today, you certainly, you know, 3GB of V memory it's not a limiting factor. And I'm not personally a triple screen boy. I use it for my desktop machine, so my workstation, but as far as gaming is concerned, I actually like a nice single high res. And something I do need to say, because it keeps coming up in the comments a lot lately, don't forget your screen size, so 24 inch, 27 inch, 30 inch, 32-inch TV, 50-inch TV, that has nothing to do with the actual resolution of your screen, and it's the resolution that makes the difference. You could have a 50-inch TV, so a proper 50-inch, even 60-inch 1080p TV, and this screen here, where it's 2560 by 1440, has more pixels. So that means a graphics card will be working harder to run this than it will your thing in your front room. So just remember that. It's about the resolution, not the screen size. Because like I said, that keeps coming up a lot lately, and I think personally that's probably the console fanboys that just don't know any better. They're used to sticking it on their telly rather than a decent monitor, so when they walk into Curry's, they go and buy the biggest TV that they can do, because they're fucking idiots and they don't know any better. Come at me, because I don't like you, console boys. Anyways, go and cry over your 720p with what is it? What's that shitty COD game? Oh, Ghost. Yeah, go and cry that your Xbox will only play it at 720p. Digging myself a grave. Anyway, So this is quite literally the greatest thing that nVidia have ever made. And the best bit about it is it absolutely smashes the Titan out of the park. It's just going, bye, we don't want to see you anymore. And yet it's still significantly cheaper. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to go, but Tom, you said the Titan was only there to make these things look good. And it kind of is. Apart from the fact that nVidia have now woken up and they've now brought us something that's just so much better than the Titan for decent money. And I kind of think this is the kind of price the Titan should have been in the first place, personally. But anyway, I don't want to start any more controversy and all that kind of stuff. The results speak for themselves. The only thing that you guys need to decide is how much you're willing to pay for it. If you're not willing to pay 560 quid, then the next best thing down the line is going to be the 290X. If you don't like the idea of getting an AMD, then you can now pick up the 780 for £379 upwards. So there's a massive price difference there, and it really comes down to how much you're willing to pay and how much power that you really need. You don't need to start going bitching and fucking dick-arsing around on forums, slating me off, saying that I'm a fanboy. It's just down for you to decide. I personally think this is wicked. And if I was going to be building my own rig and I had the money to buy this, this would be the type of thing that I would be looking at. Mainly for me, and I'll be honest about it, it is because it is quicker than the 290X. But more importantly, it looks nicer and it's quieter. And if you then, start to take in the overclocking and stuff like that as well, it really, you just have to work out whether you want to spend that extra money over the 290X or not. So I'm now giving you all the information that's now dumped in your lap. It's for you to decide what you want to do with. You don't need to say, oh, Tom said I shouldn't, Tom said I should. It's the power is in your hands, people. Anyway, so I'm going to leave this here. I think you probably will be seeing this again in the not too distant future, because I need to get water blocks and stuff out, as long as I can make sure that the water blocks are the same, and I think they are. I don't think they've changed the PCB. But anyway, maybe that's something I probably should have covered, shouldn't I? Duh. Did run out of time. But anyway, I am going to love you and leave you. This is Tiny Tom Logan with the Gold Award winning nVidia GTX780 Ti out. Ding!